1931. Manchuria. A freezing wind rolls across the plains of northeastern China as the Imperial Japanese Army launches its first major expansionist strike on the Asian mainland. The region has natural resources Japan considers essential and a population the empire believes it can dominate. But the takeover is not only military. In the shadows of Manchurian cities, far from the front lines, Japan begins constructing something unprecedented, a secret scientific empire. One of these facilities will become the most infamous biological warfare center in world history. Its name? Unit 731. And among its many horrors, one of the strangest and least known is the development of a weapon built not from steel, fire, or explosives, but from fleas. This is the forgotten story of how, in the years leading to World War II, an entire military operation grew around breeding, infecting, and deploying plague-carrying fleas, tiny insects transformed into weapons capable of causing mass death. After occupying Manchuria, Japanese military planners begin exploring unconventional ways to control large populations while reducing the need for costly conventional battles. A new idea emerges: biological warfare. Japan's military elite believe disease can be engineered, controlled, and deployed, turning epidemics into weapons. This involves identifying a delivery method, and among several candidates, one tiny insect stands out: the oriental rat flea, known historically for spreading the bubonic plague. Fleas are small. Fleas are hardy. Fleas can survive long drops, cold temperatures, and transport by rodents. And most importantly, fleas can infect entire communities silently. By 1932, internal documents show the Imperial Japanese Army pouring resources into biological research, leading to the formation of multiple covert units. At the center of them stands a single man, Dr. Ishii Shiro, a microbiologist who argues that biological wars could win wars faster than bullets. Unit 731, his creation, became the headquarters of flea-based plague research. By 1933, Japanese scientists begin breeding fleas inside heavily guarded laboratories in Manchuria. Their goal is not simply to raise fleas, but to infect them with Yersinia pestis, the bacteria that causes the plague. But this is harder than it sounds. Fleas require hosts, usually rats, to feed on, and they must be kept alive while carrying deadly bacteria. To solve this, Unit 731 constructs enormous rodent breeding farms, capable of raising thousands of rats every month. These rats are deliberately infected with plague. Then fleas are released onto them, feeding on infected blood and becoming carriers themselves. By 1935, Unit 731 has perfected the method. Breed fleas, infect fleas, collect fleas, freeze fleas for storage, pack fleas into ceramic bomblets. The weapon is beginning to take shape, but Japan still needs a way to test it. In 1936, Unit 731 receives full backing from high-ranking Japanese generals. The facility expands into a massive research complex with 150 buildings and over 3,000 personnel. Inside its walls, plague-infected fleas are now produced on industrial scale. The next phase is brutal. Fleas infected with plague are released on prisoners, civilians, prisoners of war, and political detainees, all held in sealed outdoor pens. Scientists observe how quickly the disease spreads, how many die, and how environmental conditions affect transmission. The results are grim. Plague spreads fast. Fleas survive outside longer than expected, and controlling outbreaks is nearly impossible once they begin. To Unit 731, this is a success. To the victims, It is a silent massacre.
By 1939, Japan possesses the world's first operational flea-based biological weapon system. But they are about to test it outside the laboratory, on real cities. With the Second Sino-Japanese War expanding, the Imperial Army turns its attention to using plague flea bombs in the field. Between 1939 and 1942, several covert biological attacks take place in China. Japanese aircraft carry ceramic bombs, each packed with thousands of plague-infected fleas. The strategy is simple. Bombers drop the canisters over rural towns. The ceramic shells shatter on impact. Fleas scatter across farmland and villages. Rats pick them up. Plague spreads quietly, days before anyone suspects an attack. Historical records document outbreaks in multiple Chinese cities, including Ningbo, Kuzhou, and the surrounding Zhejiang region. Entire communities fall ill. Hospitals report symptoms consistent with the bubonic plague. Doctors have no idea they are witnessing a deliberate military attack. Japan denies involvement. To this day, many of the victims never learn the cause of their own epidemic. Among all biological agents available in the 1930s, Japan's choice of fleas might seem strange, but militarily, fleas offer several advantages. 1. They are nearly invisible. A bomb filled with fleas leaves no smoke, no crater, and no chemical residue. 2. They multiply through rodents. Once released, fleas spread naturally across cities and towns. 3. They carry a historically proven deadly disease. The Black Death had killed tens of millions, proof the method could work. 4. They are deniable. An outbreak can be blamed on natural causes. To the Imperial Army, fleas are the perfect covert weapon. By 1941, Unit 731 has grown into an industrial-scale biological weapons factory. Every month, its laboratories produce millions of fleas, tens of thousands of plague-infected rodents, hundreds of ceramic biological bombs. Researchers perfect flea bombs, spears designed to burst at low altitudes and scatter insects over populated areas. Inside the facility, workers harvest fleas from infected rats using fine meshes. The fleas are cooled to sleep, packed into containers, and prepared for bombing missions. Unit 731 establishes secondary sites to support the operation, including water testing labs, rat farms, and plague testing zones. Japan is now capable of deploying plague fleas across regions the size of entire provinces. The Japanese Army conducts at least 11 confirmed plague flea attacks during the early 1940s. Example: the Ningbo attack, 1940. Aircraft drop biological bombs over the city. Shortly after, plague cases surge. Many victims die within days. Chinese medical workers struggle to contain the outbreak. Example: Zhejiang Province, 1942. After the Doolittle raid on Tokyo, Japan carries out brutal retaliatory operations. Plague flea bombs are dropped over multiple towns. The outbreaks spread far beyond the initial drop zones. In some cases, the disease jumps from initial victims to local rat populations, triggering secondary waves of infection. This becomes one of the most effective, though ethically horrific, biological attacks ever recorded. While Japan sees initial success, plague is not controllable weapon. Fleas spread unpredictably. Rats migrate. Weather alters flea survival rates. Entire outbreaks burn out too quickly or explode too widely. In several cases, plague spreads back towards Japanese-controlled regions, killing civilians and soldiers. Japan quietly realizes the danger. This weapon does not obey orders, but by now they have invested too much to stop.
One of the most shocking aspects of the Flea weapon program emerges in 1944. Declassified documents reveal Japanese military plans for an operation known as Operation Cherry Blossoms at Night. The plan: load submarine-launched aircraft with plague-infected fleas, fly them over the western United States, release fleas over California cities. If executed, this would have been the first biological attack on American soil. The operation was scheduled for late 1945. It never happened, only because Japan surrendered before the plan reached deployment readiness. As Soviet forces invade Manchuria in August 1945, Unit 731 personnel destroy buildings, incinerate documents, and execute prisoners to eliminate evidence. Researchers release plague-infected animals into rivers and forests, hoping to hide the program's scale. But remnants survive: journal entries, testimonies, and later confessions. The war ends. The Flea weapon program is shut down, but its legacy remains one of the most disturbing examples of biological warfare in history. After Japan's surrender, U.S. occupation forces investigate Unit 731. American intelligence officers quickly realize how advanced Japan's biological research is. In exchange for the data, including plague flea research, many Unit 731 scientists avoid war crime prosecution. The United States absorbs the research into its own Cold War biological warfare program. Meanwhile, the victims receive no justice. Several factors bury the story. Japan denies biological attacks for decades. China's wartime records are fragmented. The U.S. classifies captured documents. Survivors often die without formal recognition. The result is one of the most overlooked operations of World War II, an entire program built around weaponized fleas. Today, the Flea weapon program of Unit 731 stands as a warning. It illustrates how easily science can be transformed into a weapon, how small organisms can cause devastation equal to bombs, and how secrecy can hide some of the darkest chapters of history for generations. Though the world has since banned biological weapons, the research conducted during this period remains a chilling reminder of what humanity is capable of when ethics collapse in the face of military ambition. From the cold Manchurian plains of 1931 to the last days of World War II, from secret laboratories to bombers flying over unsuspecting cities, the story of Japan's flea-based biological weapons remains one of the most shocking and least discussed operations of the war. A reminder that sometimes the smallest creatures can be turned into the deadliest weapons. Behind the hunting legacy of Unit 731's Flea program lies an intricate web of scientific reasoning, cold, methodical, and stripped of any moral restraint. To understand the magnitude of the operation, historians have examined how Japanese scientists turned a natural parasite into a strategic weapon. Breeding the vector. Fleas reproduce rapidly when provided with stable hosts and warm environments. Unit 731 used heated barns, controlled humidity chambers, massive rat populations, continuous blood supply systems. Workers collected flea eggs in trays, carefully separating larvae from debris. The larvae were fed dried blood powder until they matured. Once adult fleas emerged, they were transferred into cages filled with plague-infected rats. Within days, the cycle of infection was complete. Infecting the fleas. The process was far from delicate. Rats were deliberately infected with Yersinia pestis, then allowed to weaken. As the rats succumbed to the disease, thousands of fleas fed on them. By the time scientists harvested the insects, many were swollen with plague-rich blood. This was the payload Japan intended to deliver to enemy populations. Packaging the weapon. Infected fleas were cooled until they entered a dormant state, a form of induced hibernation. This made them easier to handle, count, and pack. Then they were loaded into thin-walled ceramic bombs designed to shatter at low altitude. These bombs were filled with fleas, grain, wheat husks, and bits of cloth. The organic materials encouraged rats to investigate the bomb sites, creating a chain reaction that spread the fleas even farther. The science was precise, the purpose was chilling. Unit 731's test fields were built to resemble real villages. Houses, wells, and even small farms were constructed within fenced compounds. These mock settlements became the proving ground for biological weapons. The Maruta system. Prisoners, referred to by the dehumanizing term Maruta, meaning logs, were used to study infection patterns. After a flea release, scientists observed time to first bite, rate of initial transmission, spread among clustered populations, mortality curves, environmental effects like temperature and moisture. Each experiment had a specific military question attached. If a village were attacked at night, how far would the fleas spread? If dropped in winter, how many would survive? If rats migrated, how quickly could plague extend beyond the target zone? Every answer helped refine future biological operations. Documented outbreaks inside the facility. Some tests ran out of control. Fleas jumped beyond intended zones. Rats escaped cages. Internal memos describe accidental plague outbreaks that forced researchers to burn entire laboratory wings. Even within Unit 731, the weapon was unpredictable. But the Japanese High Command continued demanding results. By 1940, Unit 731 no longer operated alone. Japan built a network of biological warfare units across occupied China. Unit 100, focusing on animal pathogens, Unit 1644, operating in Nanjing, Unit 1855, launching experiments in Beijing, Unit 8604, based in Guangzhou. Each had a unique role, but the most notorious was Unit 731 with its flea production lines. Agricultural warfare units. Some special branches worked on destroying enemy food supplies using anthrax, glanders, wheat stem rust fungus, and rice blast fungus. Fleas, however, remain the core delivery mechanism for human-targeted pathogens. Logistical integration. By now, this was not an isolated program. It was a fully integrated wartime industry. Railway cars delivered rats. Refrigerated trucks transported flea batches. Aircraft squadrons modified bomb bays for ceramic biological bombs. Intelligence units selected vulnerable target regions. Japan envisioned a future where biological weapons would serve as core components of empire expansion. Most historical accounts focus on the broad impact of plague outbreaks across cities, but the quieter tragedy lies in thousands of small, undocumented deaths. Rural villages. In remote villages, plague symptoms were often mistaken for seasonal fevers or food poisoning. Families buried the dead without medical reports. Local officials, often under Japanese occupation, had no understanding of biological warfare. Many victims never knew they had been struck by a deliberate military operation. Medical workers. Chinese doctors working in wartime hospitals faced impossible conditions. They lacked antibiotics. Streptomycin, the first effective plague treatment, would not be discovered until 1943. Their only tools were quarantines, burning infected belongings, and primitive disinfectants and improvised protective garments. Many doctors and nurses died after accidental exposure. Collateral victims on all sides. Fleas did not respect borders. They attacked Japanese troops. They infected local collaborators. They spread into pet animals, livestock, and rodent populations far beyond intended targets. Biological warfare, once unleashed, behaved like a wildfire. By 1943, flaws in the flea weapon system began to emerge, problems Japanese scientists could not solve. Problem 1. Weather instability. Fleas were vulnerable to sudden cold fronts or heavy rainfall. Entire bomb drops failed when the insects died before reaching hosts. Problem 2. Crater formation. Ceramic bombs shattered too violently in some tests, pulverizing many fleas. Problem 3. Rodent resistance. Some rat populations in southern China carried natural immunities or bacterial competitors that reduced plague transmission. Problem 4. Uncontrolled spread. Outbreaks traveled in unpredictable directions, sometimes threatening Japanese-held territories. The weapon was powerful, but unreliable. Despite these setbacks, Japan continued the program until the final months of World War II. As Japan faced mounting losses, desperation drove the military to escalate biological operations. The Zhejiang-Jiangxi retreat. During withdrawals, Japanese forces contaminated wells, released diseased animals, and dumped plague-infected fleas in abandoned villages. Historical records show plague outbreaks following their retreating paths almost like footprints. Balloon-based attacks. Japan experimented with high-altitude balloons capable of drifting hundreds of miles. Some designs proposed carrying plague fleas. Most prototypes failed during testing, but the concept shows how far the empire was willing to go. Last-ditch plans. The military drafted plans to infect Allied POW camps in the Pacific with fleas. They also explored contaminating shipping lanes by releasing infected rodents into cargo vessels. None were executed, but they revealed the scale of Japan's intentions. By August 1945, Japan's biological war empire collapsed. Emergency destruction orders. As Soviet troops stormed Manchuria, laboratories were destroyed, documents burned, prisoners executed, plague cultures dumped into rivers, entire rat farms incinerated. Scientists fled into civilian populations to avoid capture. Soviet discoveries. When the Red Army entered Pingfang, the headquarters of Unit 731, they found ruined laboratories, restraining devices, biological bomb fragments, mass graves, burnt cages and furnaces, but most living witnesses were gone. American intervention. The U.S., fearing Soviet advantage, offered immunity to Unit 731 leaders in exchange for their biological research. The data from flea experiments, including plague survival rates and optimal dissemination methods, became part of classified American archives. Justice never came for most victims. The legacy of Japan's flea-based biological weapon did not end in 1945. Cold War research. During the 1950s and 60s, multiple nations, including the US and Soviet Union, studied insect-based delivery systems. The idea of using mosquitoes, ticks, fleas, crop-eating insects became a quiet arms race. While no future program matched the industrial scale of Unit 731, the concept born in Manchuria influenced decades of military thinking. For decades, the victims of these biological attacks remained nameless. Only in recent years have historians reconstructed the full timeline through declassified documents, survivor testimonies, local Chinese medical archives, war crimes tribunal transcripts, interviews with former unit members. The truth is clear. The weaponization of fleas was not a side project, it was a major wartime operation. The story of Japan's flea weapon forces modern researchers to confront uncomfortable questions. How far should science be allowed to go? Can biological knowledge ever be fully controlled? What responsibility do scientists bear when their work is used for harm? Could such weapons reappear in the future? The lessons are stark, and the historical record serves as a warning. From farms filled with plague rats, to aircraft releasing ceramic bombs over helpless towns. From mock villages designed for human testing, to global superpowers racing to acquire forbidden knowledge, the operation that weaponized fleas remains one of history's darkest intersections between science and warfare. Small enough to hide in the palm of a hand, deadly enough to devastate entire regions, invisible until it was too late. The story does not end here, because the consequences of this operation still echo across the modern world.